Great Britain paying tribute to Jo Cox, the British lawmaker who was killed in a brutal attack. Cox, a supporter of Britain staying in the European Union, she was shot and stabbed by a man who some witnesses said shouted "Britain first" during and after the attack. A 41-year-old mother, very active in this debate. Now, the killer's motives, they are still not clear at this point. Campaigning for the upcoming EU vote, however, has been suspended for a second day in a row. So we're asking, what impact, if any, is this tragedy going to have on the vote? Here to weigh in, Jonas Ferris of MaxFunds.com and economist Steve Moore. Jonas, do you believe her murder will affect what we see in terms of the outcome of the vote?
Definitely. If you look at the currency markets, the pound has basically been improving ever since this horrible incident. It could be one of the most significant murders, horrible events to affect economic markets in history.
And that people will be more sympathetic to the need to stay within the European Union, in part out of sympathy to her?
Right, because she is a pretty appealing character in general, and the other person seems like a nationalist crank, Nazi grade, if anything, and that makes people that don't really understand it, because it's an economic issue at its heart.
It's an economic issue, but it's also an immigration issue, right, well, Steve Moore? I mean, there's a lot of concern right now that you've got too many sort of bad seeds coming into Europe right now, in that they may have sympathies with ISIS, and the borders are open, and if you get into Europe, you can get into Great Britain pretty easily if they continue to stay and be part of the EU.
Yeah, that's why I think actually the momentum may be kind of countervailing forces. I think the terrorist incident we saw in Orlando plays in the minds of people all over the world, and certainly immigration, and I would say just national sovereignty, Trish, is a big issue for the UK right now. And the question is, do they want to be more like Europe, or do they want to be more like the United States? And to me, that's not a tough call. I mean, you look at the European economy, and as bad as we're doing, we're still doing a lot better than Europe.
So you think it's a good idea for Great Britain to make this split, Steve? Why?
Oh, I do. Again, I think England is sandwiched between Europe, and then on the other side of the pond, you've got the United States. And they've been in this kind of, identity crisis over the last 50 years. Do they want to be more of a socialist state like France and Italy and Spain, or do they want to be more free market oriented? And I just think, look, they can still have trade agreements and so on with Europe, but they don't have to tie their national identity. They don't have to buy into the
whole thing. You know, but the concern, of course, right now in the markets, Jonas, is that it's going to just create mayhem if Great Britain leaves. I mean, there's a lot of fear right now. Why?
Well, the heads of the central bank, in which they have their own central bank, it's kind of worth noting that, are not for this. I think it's bad for markets. It's very easy to start.
Why do they think it's so bad for markets?
Well, part of it, there's so many, it's been so long, it's been since the early 70s, to get out of any arrangement that's this deep with this many regulations could cause problems like any panic where you saw, like, in the 90s with the Asian contagion. But there's also issues where maybe the UK thinks they're bigger than their bridges. Like, if anybody should be complaining about the Europe situation, it's Germany. They got to deal with they're the one really propping up Greece. Like the UK, they have their own central bank, they have their own currency. They're not really, they have their own tax policy. Like, they're not really covering. And yes, there's a lot of losers in the EU. Everyone knows that, and they're broke and they're getting a lot of money. But
well, we're going to be watching it very carefully for sure. Thank you, Jonas. Thank you, Steve.